So the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has officially been impeached for 12 hours. And we're waiting to hear from Senator Mitch McConnell to speak on what's exactly going to happen. We also have Pelosi that will speak at 10:45. And yeah, it's kind of where we're at right now. So once again, everybody get settled in, because we have a lot to go over. Right now we are waiting for Mitch McConnell to begin. And this should be beginning any moment. You are looking live at the U.S. Capitol in beautiful, beautiful D.C. Really, D.C.'s disgusting, actually. And we're waiting for this to begin. But for now, I guess we can play a clip of Donald Trump from his rally last night, which have just a lot of people bewildered and flustered and just really, really, really angry. And this is him speaking about a senator, the longest sitting. I'm actually not sure if he was a senator or in the House, but it really doesn't matter. The longest sitting congressman in U.S. history. And he made some like really wild remarks kind of about this particular senator who just passed away last February. And Trump is talking about a conversation that he had with the late congressman's wife about lowering the flags to half mast. And yeah, we're kind of gonna we're gonna watch this. Actually, we might be waiting for that. Televising the United States Senate may be used for news purposes. So there we go. So we are going to listen in to this. First off, as we're looking at the Senate floor, we're going to see if this is going to come to order right now or if we got time to step away. I believe we're going to have some time to step away here. and get back to Trump's remarks last night. Let's go to it real quick. It's only a 2-minute clip anyways. So we're gonna go to it. Sorry, I went to the wrong screen. And we're gonna play this clip.
The Senate will come to order. The chaplain will lead the Senate in prayer.
Actually, we will not.
Let us pray. Eternal God, you are our light and salvation, and we are not afraid. You protect us from danger, so we do not tremble. Mighty God, you are not intimidated by the challenges that confront our nation and world. Lord, inspire our lawmakers with the knowledge of your holiness that will give them reverential awe. Remind them of the many prayers they have prayed that you have already answered. Lord, you have been our help in ages past. You are our hope for the years to come. We magnify your holy name. Don't stay far off. Show yourself strong to this generation and fill us with your peace. We pray in your powerful name. Amen.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk will read the communication to the Senate.
Washington, D.C., December 19th, 2019. To the Senate, under the provisions of Rule 1, Paragraph 3 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, I hereby appoint the Honorable Tom Tillis, a senator from the state of North Carolina, to perform the duties of the chair. Signed, Chuck Grassley, President pro tempore.
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved.
so I guess we're really gonna see what happens here. And what Senate Leader Mitch McConnell has to say about after Trump getting impeached. He has been the third president in U.S. history to become impeached. And we're waiting to hear his comments and the comments of others. He's supposed to speak any minute. All right, we're gonna break away from this real quick.
Morning business is closed. Under the previous order, the Senate will resume consideration of the House message to accompany H.R. 1865, which the clerk will report.
House message to accompany H.R. 1865, an act to require the Secretary of the Treasury to mint a coin and so forth and for other purposes.
All right, so I think they're talking about minting a coin right now. That's what it seems like. I don't think that they're... Mitch McConnell is down in your right-hand corner, though. He is at a podium at a mic. He's the one we're waiting to hear from. So I don't know whether to break away or not. Well, I guess we'll come back to it if needed. So like I was trying to say,
Majority Leader.
Last night, House Democrats finally did what they had decided to do a long time ago. They voted to impeach President Trump. Over the last 12 weeks, House Democrats have conducted the most rushed, least thorough, and most unfair impeachment inquiry in modern history. Now, their slapdash process has concluded in the first purely partisan presidential impeachment since the wake of the Civil War. The opposition to impeachment was bipartisan. Only one part of one faction wanted this outcome. The House's conduct risks deeply damaging the institutions of American government. This particular House of Representatives has let its partisan rage at this particular president create a toxic new precedent that will echo well into the future. That's what I want to discuss right now. The historic degree to which House Democrats have failed to do their duty and what it will mean for the Senate to do ours. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the fact that Washington Democrats made up their minds to impeach President Trump since before he was even inaugurated. Here's a reporter in April of 2016. Donald Trump isn't even the Republican nominee yet, but impeachment is already on the lips of pundits, newspaper editorials, constitutional scholars, and even a few members of Congress. April 2016. On Inauguration Day, 2017, the headline in the Washington Post, "The campaign to impeach President Trump has begun." That was day one. In April 2017, 3 months into the presidency, a senior House Democrat said, "I'm going to fight every day until he's impeached." That was 3 months into the administration. In December 2017, 2 years ago, Congressman Jerry Nadler was openly campaigning to be the ranking member on the House Judiciary Committee, specifically because he was an expert on impeachment. That's the Nadler's campaign to be the top Democrat on judiciary. This week wasn't even the first time House Democrats have introduced articles of impeachment. It was actually the 7th time. They started less than 6 months after the president was sworn in. They tried to impeach President Trump for being impolite to the press, for being mean to professional athletes, for changing President Obama's policy on transgender people in the military. All of these things were high crimes and misdemeanors, according to Democrats. Now, this wasn't just a few people. Scores of Democrats voted to move forward with impeachment on 3 of those prior occasions. So let's be clear. The House's vote yesterday was not some neutral judgment that Democrats came to with great reluctance. It was the predetermined end of a partisan crusade that began before President Trump was even nominated, let alone sworn in. For the very first time in modern history, we've seen a political faction in Congress promise from the moment a president election ended, that they would find some way to overturn it. A few months ago, Democrats' 3-year-long impeachment in search of articles found its way to the subject of Ukraine. House Democrats embarked on the most rushed, least thorough, and most unfair impeachment inquiry in modern history. Chairman Schiff's inquiry was poisoned by partisanship from the outset. Its procedures and parameters were unfair in unprecedented ways. Democrats tried to make Chairman Schiff into a de facto special prosecutor, notwithstanding the fact that he is a partisan member of Congress who'd already engaged in strange and biased behavior. He scrapped the precedent to cut the Republican minority out of the process. He denied President Trump the same sorts of procedural rights that houses of both parties had provided to past presidents of both parties. President Trump's counsel could not participate in Chairman Schiff's hearings, present evidence, or cross-examine witnesses. The House Judiciary Committee's crack at this was even more ahistorical. It was like the Speaker called up Chairman Nadler and ordered one impeachment. Rush delivery, please. The committee found no facts on its own, did nothing to verify the Schiff report. Their only witnesses were liberal law professors and congressional staffers. So, Mr. President, there's a reason the impeachment inquiry that led to President Nixon's resignation required about 14 months of hearings, 14 months, in addition to a special prosecutor's investigation. With President Clinton, the independent counsel's inquiry had been underway literally for years before the House Judiciary Committee actually dug in. Mountains of evidence, mountains of testimony from firsthand fact witnesses, serious legal battles to get what was necessary. This time around, House Democrats skipped all of that, spent just 12 weeks. 12 weeks. More than a year of hearings for Nixon, multiple years of investigation for Clinton, and they've impeached President Trump in 12 weeks. 12 weeks. So let's talk about what the House actually produced in those 12 weeks. House Democrats' rushed and rigged inquiry yielded 2 articles, 2 of impeachment. They are fundamentally unlike any articles that any prior House of Representatives has ever passed. The first article concerns the core events which House Democrats claim are impeachable. The timing of aid to Ukraine. But it does not even purport to allege any actual crime. Instead, they deploy the vague phrase, abuse of power, to impugn the president's action in a general, indeterminate way. Speaker Pelosi's House just gave in to a temptation that every other House in history has managed to resist. Let me say that again. Speaker Pelosi's House just gave in to a temptation that every other House in our history has managed to resist. They impeach a president whom they do not even allege has committed an actual crime known to our laws. They've impeached simply because they disagree with a presidential act and question the motive behind it. So let's look at history. Andrew Johnson impeachment involved around a clear violation of a criminal statute, albeit an unconstitutional statute. Nixon had obstruction of justice, a felony under our laws. Clinton had perjury, also a felony. Now, the Constitution does not say the House can impeach only those presidents who violate a law, but history matters. history matters, and precedent matters. And there were important reasons why every previous House of Representatives in American history restrained itself from crossing this Rubicon. The framers of our Constitution very specifically discussed this issue, whether the House should be able to impeach presidents just for, quote, maladministration. Just for maladministration. In other words, because the House simply thought the president had bad judgment or was doing a bad job. They talked about all this when they wrote the Constitution. The written records of our founders' debates show they specifically rejected this. They realized it would create a total dysfunction to set the bar for impeachment that low. That low. James Madison himself explained that allowing impeachment on that basis would mean the president serves at the pleasure of the Congress instead of the pleasure of the American people. It would make the president a creature of Congress, not the head of a separate and equal branch. So there were powerful reasons, Mr. President, why Congress after Congress for 230 years, required presidential impeachment to revolve around clear, recognizable crimes, even though that was not a strict limitation. Powerful reasons why for 230 years, no House opened the Pandora's box of subjective political impeachments. That 230-year tradition died last night. Now, Mr. President, House Democrats have tried to say they had to impeach President Trump on this historically thin and subjective basis because the White House challenged their request for more witnesses. And that brings us to the second article of impeachment. The House titled this one, Obstruction of Congress. What it really does is impeach the president for asserting presidential privilege. The concept of executive privilege is another 2-century-old constitutional tradition. Presidents, starting with George Washington, have invoked it. Federal courts have repeatedly affirmed it is a legitimate constitutional power. House Democrats requested extraordinary amounts of sensitive information from President Trump's White House, exactly the kinds of things over which presidents of both parties have asserted privilege in the past. Predictably and appropriately, President Trump did not simply roll over. He defended the constitutional authority of his office. No surprise there. It's not a constitutional crisis for a House to want more information than a president wants to give up. That's not a constitutional crisis. It's a routine occurrence. The separation of powers is messy by design. Here's what should have happened. Here's what should have happened. Either the president and Congress negotiate a settlement, or the third branch of government, the judiciary, addresses the dispute between the other two. The Nixon impeachment featured disagreements over presidential privilege. So they went to court. The Clinton impeachment featured disagreements over presidential privilege. So they went to the courts. This takes time. It's inconvenient. That's actually the point. Due process is not meant to maximize the convenience of the prosecutor. It's meant to protect the accused. But this time was different. Remember, 14 months of hearings for Richard Nixon, years of investigation for Bill Clinton, 12 weeks for Donald Trump. Democrats didn't have to rush this, but they chose to stick to their political timetable at the expense of pursuing more evidence through proper legal channels. Nobody made Chairman Schiff do this. He chose to. The Tuesday before last on live television, Adam Schiff explained to the entire country that if House Democrats had let the justice system follow its normal course, they might not have gotten to impeach the president in time for the election. My goodness. In Nixon, the courts were allowed to do their work. In Clinton, the courts were allowed to do their work. Only these House Democrats decided due process is too much work. They'd rather impeach with no proof. Well, Mr. President, they tried to cover for their own partisan impatience by pretending that the routine occurrence of a president exerting constitutional privilege is itself a second impeachable offense. The following is something that Adam Schiff literally said in early October. Here's what he said. Any action that forces us to litigate or to have to consider litigation will be considered further evidence of obstruction of justice. That's Adam Schiff. Here's what the chairman effectively said and what one of his committee members restated just this week. If the president asserts his constitutional rights, it's that much more evidence he's guilty. If the president asserts his constitutional rights, it's that much more evidence he's guilty. That kind of bullying is antithetical to American justice. So those are House Democrats' 2 articles of impeachment. That's all their rushed and rigged inquiry could generate. An act that the House does not even allege is criminal, and a nonsensical claim that exercising a legitimate presidential power is somehow an impeachable offense. Mr. President, this is by far the thinnest basis for any House-passed presidential impeachment in American history. The thinnest and the weakest, and nothing else even comes close. And candidly, I don't think I'm the only person around here who realizes that. Even before the House voted yesterday, Democrats had already started to signal uneasiness with its end product. Before the articles even passed, the Senate Democratic leader went on television to demand that this body redo House Democrats' homework for them, that the Senate should supplement Chairman Schiff's sloppy work so it is more persuasive than Chairman Schiff himself bothered to make it. Of course, every such demand simply confirms that House Democrats have rushed forward with a case that is much too weak. Back in June, Speaker Pelosi promised the House would build an ironclad case. Never mind that she was basically promising impeachment months before the Ukraine events, but that's a separate matter. She promised an ironclad case. And in March, Speaker Pelosi said this, impeachment is so divisive to the country that unless there is something so compelling and overwhelming and bipartisan, I don't think we should go down that path because it divides the country. End quote. By the Speaker's own standards, the standards she set, she has failed the country. The case is not compelling, not overwhelming, and as a result, not bipartisan. The failure was made clear to everyone earlier this week when Senator Schumer began searching for ways the Senate could step out of our proper role and try to fix the House Democrats' failures for them. And it was made even more clear last night when Speaker Pelosi suggested that House Democrats may be too afraid to even transmit their shoddy work product to the Senate. Mr. President, it looks like the prosecutors are getting cold feet in front of the entire country and second-guessing whether they even want to go to trial. They said impeachment was so urgent that it could not even wait for due process, but now they're content to sit on their hands. This is really comical. Democrats' own actions concede that their allegations are unproven. The articles aren't just unproven, they're also constitutionally incoherent. Incoherent. Frankly, if either of these articles is blessed by the Senate, we could easily see the impeachment of every future president of either party. Let me say that again. If the Senate blesses this historically low bar, we will invite the impeachment of every future president. The House Democrats' allegations, as presented, are incompatible with our constitutional order. They're unlike anything that has ever been seen in 230 years of this republic. House Democrats want to create new rules for this president because they feel uniquely enraged. They feel uniquely enraged. But long after the partisan fever of this moment has broken, the institutional damage will remain. I've described the threat to the presidency. This also imperils the Senate itself. The House has created an unfair, unfinished product that looks nothing like any impeachment inquiry in American history. And if the Speaker ever gets her House in order, that mess will be dumped over here on the Senate's lap. If the Senate blesses this slapdash impeachment, if we say that from now on, this is enough, then we invite an endless parade of impeachable trials. Future Houses of either party will feel free to toss up a jump ball every time they feel angry, free to swamp the Senate with trial after trial, no matter how baseless the charges. We'd be giving future Houses of either party unbelievable new power to paralyze the Senate at their whim. More thin arguments, more incomplete evidence, more partisan impeachments. In fact, Mr. President, this same House of Representatives has already indicated that they themselves may not be finished impeaching. The House Judiciary Committee told a federal court this very week that it will continue its impeachment investigation even after voting on these articles. And multiple Democratic members have already called publicly for more. If the Senate blesses this, if the nation accepts this, presidential impeachments may cease being a once-in-a-generation event and become a constant part of the political background noise. This extraordinary tool of last resort may become just another part of the arms race of polarization. Real statesmen would have recognized, no matter their view of this president, that trying to remove him on this thin and partisan basis could unsettle the foundations of our republic. Real statesmen would have recognized, no matter how much partisan animosity might be coursing through their veins, that cheapening the impeachment process was not the answer. Historians will regard this as a great irony of our era, that so many who profess such concern for our norms and traditions themselves proved willing to trample our constitutional order to get their way. It is long past time for Washington to get a little perspective. President Trump is not the first president with a populist streak, not the first to make entrenched elites uncomfortable. He's certainly not the first president to speak bluntly, to mistrust the administrative state, or to rankle unelected bureaucrats. And heaven knows he's not the first president to assert the constitutional privileges of his office rather than roll over when Congress demands unlimited, sensitive information. None of these things, none of them, is unprecedented. I'll tell you what would be unprecedented. It will be an unprecedented constitutional crisis if the Senate literally hands the House of Representatives a new partisan vote of no confidence that the founders intentionally withheld, destroying the independence of the presidency. It will be unprecedented if we agree that any future House that dislikes any future president can rush through an unfair inquiry, skip the legal system, and paralyze the Senate with a trial. The House could do that at will under this precedent. It will be unprecedented if the Senate says second-hand and third-hand testimony from unelected civil service servants is enough to overturn the people's vote. It will be an unprecedented constitutional crisis if the Senate agrees to set the bar this low forever. It is clear what this moment requires. It requires the Senate to fulfill our founding purpose. The framers built the Senate to provide stability, to take the long view of our republic, to safeguard institutions from the momentary hysteria that sometimes consumes our politics, to keep partisan passions from literally boiling over. The Senate exists for moments like this. That's why this body has the ultimate say in impeachments. The framers knew the House would be too vulnerable to transient passions and violent factionalism. They needed a body that would consider legal questions about what has been proven and political questions about what the common good of our nation requires. Hamilton said explicitly in Federalist 65 that impeachment involves not just legal questions, but inherently political judgments about what outcome best serves the nation. The House can't do both. The courts can't do both. This is as grave an assignment as the Constitution gives to any branch of government, and the framers knew only the Senate could handle it. Well, the moment the framers feared has arrived. A political faction in the lower chamber have succumbed to partisan rage. A political faction in the House of Representatives has succumbed to a partisan rage. They have fulfilled Hamilton's philosophy that impeachment will, quote, connect itself with the pre-existing factions, enlist all their animosities, and there will always be the greatest danger that the decision will be regulated more by the comparative strength of parties than by the real demonstrations of innocence or guilt. Alexander Hamilton. That's what happened in the House last night. The vote did not reflect what had been proven. It only reflects how they feel about the president. The Senate must put this right. We must rise to the occasion. There's only one outcome that is suited to the paucity of evidence, the failed inquiry, the slapdash case. Only one outcome suited to the fact that the accusations themselves are constitutionally incoherent. Constitutionally incoherent. Only one outcome will preserve core precedents rather than smash them into bits in a fit of partisan rage because one party still cannot accept the American people's choice in 2016. It could not be clearer which outcome would serve the stabilizing, institution-preserving, fever-breaking role for which the United States Senate was created, and which outcome would betray it. The Senate's duty is clear. The Senate's duty is clear. When the time comes, we must fulfill it. Now, Mr. President, I understand there are 3 bills at the desk due a second reading in block.
The clerk will read the titles of the bill for the second time on block.
All
H.R.
right.
397,
So-
to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986.
How old is Mitch?
And so forth, and for other purposes.
That's a good question.
H.R. 1759.
I can look that up in a second.
An act to amend Title III of the Social Security.
But what I will say, all right, so here, cold in Ohio, but I have a roof over my head. That's what's up. I agree. That's where it's at. Roofs over your head in the cold. That is definitely needed. So last night, also Donald Trump was at a rally in Michigan, a Trump rally in Michigan, and he was talking, and he wound up speaking about the longest sitting congressman ever. And he was talking about a story about him, because we are waiting to hear from Pelosi and a couple of other people. And he was talking about a story about this woman who's now a congresswoman. Her husband, who had just passed in February. Debbie Gingle is her name, and he made some pretty outrageous comments. And I just kind of want to get like your take on these comments, because either way, I feel like this should have never been said, in my personal opinion. And I know that this is a soundbite that you're probably going to hear all day, every day, for the next, 2 weeks, even couple months, but I do think it's important to talk about and see what the situation is, because it did happen last night, and we're just going to roll the clip, and then you're going to tell me what your thoughts on it are.
Then you have this Dingle. You know Dingle from Michigan? You know Dingle?
Oh, this is not the exact one. I want to get the one from last night. I was wondering why it looks so different. So this is the one from last night.
Then you have this Dingle. You know Dingle from Michigan?
Whoa.
You know Dingle? You ever hear of her, Michigan? Debbie Dingle, that's a real beauty.
Guys.
So she calls me up like 8 months ago. Her husband was here a long time. But I didn't give him the B treatment. I didn't give him the C or the D. I could have. Nobody would have, I gave the A+ treatment. Take down the flags. Why are you taking them down? For ex-Congressman Dingle. Oh, okay. Do this, do that, do that. rotunda, everything. I gave him everything. That's okay. I don't want
Absolutely,
anything for. I
boss.
don't need anything for anything. She calls me up. It's the nicest thing that's ever happened. Thank you so much. John would be so thrilled. He's
Listen.
looking down. He'd be so thrilled. Thank you so much, sir.
Now, he just said, looking down, this is supposedly Debbie Dingell, the wife of the congressman, his wife, talking to Trump, right? This is like what she's saying. She said he'd be looking down so thrilled because Trump claims that he lowered the flags to half-staff. Once this congressman, the longest sitting congressman, by the way, in American history, died. And so she just said to him, you know, he's looking down and he's so grateful.
I said, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Maybe he's looking up. I don't know.
He just said maybe he's looking up. Basically saying that the man is in hell. Now, this man is a war veteran, a lifelong politician. It's just, that's not true. That's not true, Andrew. And I'll explain why. Because the President of the United States, in situations like that, do not lower the flag. Congress does. Congress lowers the flag, not the President of the United States. Just making that clear. So that's pretty. It's pretty interesting that he said that he did it. So I mean, say what you want, but it's really kind of interesting. I think
of a foreign power in our elections, not for the good of the country.
Let's go
to
to
benefit himself personally. The articles also charge
let's go to
that the
Schumer.
president obstructed Congress in the investigation of those matters. Together, these articles suggest the president committed a grave injury to our grand democracy. The conduct they describe is very much what the founders feared when they forged the impeachment powers of the Congress. The founders, in their wisdom, gave the House the power to accuse, the Senate the power to judge. We are now asked to fulfill our constitutional role as a court of impeachment. Now that the House of Representatives has impeached President Trump, the nation turns its eyes to the Senate. What will the nation see? Will the nation see what Alexander Hamilton saw? A body of government with confidence enough to preserve, unawed and uninfluenced, the necessary impartiality? Or will the nation see the Senate dragged into the depths of partisan fervor? The nation just witnessed how the Republican leader sees his role in this chapter of our history, demonstrating both an unfortunate descent into partisanship and demonstrating the fundamental weakness of the president's defense. Leader McConnell claimed that the impeachment of President Trump is illegitimate because the House voted along party lines. Forgive me, but House Democrats cannot be held responsible for the cravenness of the House Republican caucus and their blind fealty to the president. Leader McConnell claimed the impeachment was motivated by partisan rage. This from the man who said proudly, "I am not impartial. I have no intention to be impartial at all in the trial of President Trump." What hypocrisy. Leader McConnell accused the House Democrats of an obsession to get rid of President Trump. This from the man who proudly declared his #1 goal was to make President Obama a one-term president. Leader McConnell claimed that Democrats impeached the president for asserting executive privilege. President Trump never formally claimed executive privilege. He claimed, quote, absolute immunity, unquote. And the White House counsel wrote a letter stating simply that the administration would not comply with any subpoenas. Leader McConnell claimed that the Democrats' quote, obsession with impeachment has prevented the House from pursuing legislation to help the American people. Leader McConnell knows very, very well that the House Democratic majority has passed hundreds, literally hundreds of
What did he
bills
lie about? I might have missed it.
that gathered dust here in the Senate, condemned to a legislative graveyard by none other than Leader McConnell himself, who proudly called himself the Grim Reaper. Members of the Senate, members of the 116th Senate,
Correct.
denied the
They
opportunity
specifically did not go to court
legislate
because
by
they did
Leader
not want to
McConnell.
wait.
We aren't even allowed to debate the issues that would impact the American people. Health care, infrastructure, prescription drugs. We could have spent the year debating these issues. We weren't doing impeachment. Leader McConnell has chosen not to focus on these issues and to put none of these bills on the floor. And as he reminds us often, he alone decides what goes on the floor. Leader McConnell claimed that the House did not afford the president due process. The leader knows well that President Trump refused to participate in the process, despite invitation, and blocked witnesses and documents from Congress in unprecedented fashion. Leader McConnell claimed that the House ran, quote, the most rushed, least thorough, and most unfair impeachment inquiry in modern history. I know that that's the Republican talking point, but here's the reality. Leader McConnell is plotting the most rushed, least thorough, and most unfair impeachment trial in modern history. His plan to prevent House managers from calling witnesses to prove their case is a dramatic break from precedent. We heard a lot about precedent from the leader. Never has there been a presidential impeachment trial in which the majority prevented the House managers from fairly presenting their case, to have witnesses explain their knowledge of the alleged malfeasance. Will Leader McConnell, breaking precedent, strong-arm his caucus into making this the first Senate impeachment trial of a president in history that heard no witnesses? We ask, is the president's case so weak that none of the president's men can defend him under oath? Is the president's case so weak that none of the president's men can defend him under oath? If the House case is so weak, why is Leader McConnell so afraid of witnesses and documents? We believe the House case is strong, very strong. But if the Republican leader believes it's so weak, why is he so afraid of relevant witnesses and documents, which will not prolong things very long? In our proposal, 4 hours for each witness. It is true, as the leader has said, that the framers built the
4
Senate
hours.
to provide stability and to keep partisan passions from boiling over. However, their vision of the Senate is a far cry from the partisan body Senator McConnell has created. I hope America was watching the Republican leader deliver his speech. I truly do. Because most glaring of all was the fact that Leader McConnell's 30-minute partisan stemwinder contained hardly a single defense of the President of the United States on the merits. Almost none defended President Trump, because they can't. In the wake of an enormous amount of evidence uncovered by House investigators, much of it in the form of testimony by top Trump officials, whom the administration tried to silence, the Republican leader could not rebut the accusations against the president with facts. The Republican leader complained about the process. The Republican leader made many partisan and inflammatory accusations about Democrats, but he did not advance an argument in defense of the president's conduct on the merits. That, in and of itself, is a damning reflection of the state of the president's defense. Our goal in the Senate, above all, should be to conduct a fair and speedy trial. I have proposed a very reasonable structure that would do just that. 4 witnesses, only those with direct knowledge of the charges made by the House, only those who could provide new, relevant, and potentially illuminating testimony. Strict time limits on each stage of the process to prevent the trial from dragging out too long. It's eminently reasonable. It's eminently fair.
But now they're going to drag it out anyway.
A group who had no partisan
Well, I mean, that's
bias
what Pelosi's alluding
come
to,
up
at least.
with this type of proposal. I have yet to hear one good argument why less evidence is better than more evidence, particularly in such a serious moment as impeachment of the President of the United States. In Leader McConnell's 30-minute screed, he did not make one argument why the witness and documents should not be part of the trial. President Trump protests that he did not receive due process in the House impeachment inquiry. Due process is the ability to respond to charges made against you and present your side of the case. The President was invited to provide witnesses and provide documents at every
Oh, I think the
stage
Republicans
of the
can use
process.
this like
He chose
100%.
not to. Still, Democrats are offering the President due process again here in the Senate.
The Republicans can use
The
this to
witnesses
their
we
advantage.
suggest are top Trump-appointed officials.
Like
They aren't
crazy.
Democrats. We don't know if their testimony would exculpate the President or incriminate him. But their testimony should be heard. If the President's counsel wants to call other witnesses with direct knowledge of why the aid to Ukraine was delayed, we say they should be able to do so. President Trump claims he wants due process. I suspect he would rather hide or name call, because if he really wanted due process, he could get it easily.
That's a smart way to think about
One
it,
phone
Charles.
call to Leader McConnell telling him to let his aides testify. One phone call to his chief of staff telling him to release
Go from the far
documents to
left to the
Congress.
far right,
Both of these actions would let the truth
but not
come
changing
out.
any views, just agreeing with Trump on this.
I ask again, can none of the President's men come defend him under oath?
I agree.
To my Republican colleagues, our message is a simple one. Democrats want a fair trial that examines the relevant facts. We want a fair trial. The message from Leader McConnell at the moment is that he has no intention of conducting a fair trial.
Because they wanted the
intention
whistleblower,
of acting impartially, no intention
Adam Schiff,
of getting the facts.
and a couple other people.
Despite our disagreements, I will meet with Leader McConnell soon to discuss the rules. But each senator will influence whether the Senate lives
Yeah, I
up
don't
to
like
its
Biden at all.
constitutional duty to serve as an impartial court of impeachment. In the coming weeks, Republican senators will face a choice. Each Republican senator will face a choice. Do they want a fair trial, or do they want to allow the President free rein? Each senator must ask him or herself, do you want a fair trial? Or do you want the President to do whatever he wants, regardless of rule of law, regardless of the consequences to this great nation? The nation turns its eyes to the Senate. What will it see?
Never heard
President
about
of
that,
the United
Wolfgang.
States
So
has spent the past
I
several
have no
months
comment on that.
telling Congress it has no right to oversight.
I'd have to look
no right
at.
to investigate any of his activities, that he has absolute immunity, that Article 2 of the Constitution gives him, quote, the right to do whatever
So I have
he
no
wants,
comment on
unquote.
what you're
That's the
saying right
President's
this very
words.
second, Wolfgang, because
Past Senates
This is the first I'm hearing
have
about it.
disagreed with such views and strongly and proudly stood
It's
up
hard to
with the
keep
notion
everything
that
in
the
your head
president is not omnipotent.
and find out every
Democrats have done
piece
it.
of information.
Republicans have done it and offered it to presidents of their own party. The Senate has said in the past that the president
Yeah,
serves
they all
the people,
suck.
not himself, that he is not a king. Will it do so again?
I honestly
Or
don't
will it
think any
shirk
of them
from that
better.
responsibility?
Any of them are better
If the
than Trump.
Republicans proceed with the majority leader's
I think that
scheme
Trump and all of
to
them are
sweep
just as
these
bad.
charges
They're
under the
all
rug
on an even playing
and
field.
permit the president to ignore
Personally.
Congress, they will be creating a new precedent that will long be remembered as one of the Senate's darkest chapters. It will be remembered as a time when a simple majority in the Senate sought to grant two new rights to the president: the right to use the government for personal purposes and the right to ignore Congress at his pleasure. Here, I agree with Senator McConnell. Moments like this are why the Senate exists. If the president commits high crimes and misdemeanors, and the Congress can do nothing about it, not even conduct a fair tribunal where his conduct is judged by dispassionate representatives of the people, then the president can commit those crimes with impunity.
So,
This president can,
according
others can. I
to
have little doubt
McConnell,
that if we tell the president
they have put forth
that he can
articles of
escape
impeachment
scrutiny
7
in this
times,
instance,
but the
he will
Democrats
do it
have.
again and again.
But it was never a thing.
Future presidents will take note and may do worse. And the most powerful
Like, it was
check
never
on the
100%
executive,
like,
the one designed
didn't come to the floor or
to
anything,
protect the people from tyranny,
according to McConnell.
will be erased.
If that's the case, then
chapter
the Democrats have
in our
lost
history
all
books
credibility to me.
Could be a lesson
Every
about
single.
the erosion of checks and balances in our modern age.
I want to fact
Or
check him,
It could be a proud reaffirmation
but
of those founding principles.
I
This
don't
chapter
disbelieve what
in our
McConnell's
history
saying.
books could be about
I
the
hope it's not
overpowering
true. I
partisanship
hope he's
of our
misinformed.
times, or
Because
it
that would
could
be some crazy stuff.
about the Senate's capacity to overcome it. Again, moments like this are why the United States Senate exists.
Well, I want to see what the other articles were and such. All right, so
Mr. President.
The senator from Utah.
It's December, Mr. President.
yeah, we don't need to listen to anything else right now. So we're waiting on Pelosi now. But what I do want to do is go back to Trump last night talking about John Dingell and Debbie Dingell. And I mean, the flag being lowered at half-mast, right? When a congressman or woman dies, it should be, okay? It just should be. Should also be done when military soldiers come back, to the states, etc. There's just certain times where we should definitely do that. So, whether he did or he didn't, whether Congress did or they didn't, I don't really care. But the thing is that you're taking a war veteran, a public servant who's been in public office for, he was there over 30 years and has done so much for the state of Michigan. So much for the state of Michigan. Supposedly he's still revered there. And Trump alluded to the fact that this man might be in hell. I'm going to play the clip again because I do think it matters. And we're going to play it straight through again. But, I want you to just really, really listen to that and take that into account.
Then you have this Dingell. You know Dingell from Michigan? You know Dingell? You ever hear of her, Michigan? Debbie Dingle, that's a real beauty. So she calls me up like 8 months ago. Her husband was there a long time. But I didn't give him the B treatment. I didn't give him the C or the D. I could have. Nobody would have, you know. I gave the A+ treatment. Take down the flags. Why are you taking them down? For ex-Congressman Dingle. Oh, okay. Do this, do that, do that. Rotunda, everything. I gave him everything. That's okay. I don't want anything for it. I don't need anything for anything. She calls me up. It's the nicest thing that's ever happened. Thank you so much. John would be so thrilled. He's looking down. He'd be so thrilled. Thank you so much, sir. I said, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Maybe he's looking up. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. But let's assume he's looking down. But I gave him A+, not A, not B+, not B. I gave him the A+. And she called me so nice. Oh, I won't go into the conversation because it's not fair to do that. But all I want to say is, let's put it this way. It was the most profuse thank you that you could ever get. On a scale of 0 to 10, it was a 10. Okay.
What do you think about that? Serious question, because I think that's just pushing too far. In my personal opinion, I just think that is just pushing too far on this whole thing. Just is. You're voting her out? Are you from Michigan? I mean, okay, so take politics out of this. See, Andrew, I think you're going back to politics, and I don't think that matters in this particular context, okay? Me personally, I don't think it matters when it comes to this particular thing here. Okay, now, I'm not saying that it doesn't matter, because of course it does. You know, the way you vote, all that stuff matters, right? But in this particular circumstance, this was literally minutes after he got impeached and found out that he was impeached. Minutes! And he's saying that this woman's husband, dead husband, is probably looking up from hell when he died. And this is all, mind you, because Trump decided, Debbie Dingle decided to vote no. Decided to vote yes on impeaching President Trump. Decided to vote yes on impeaching President Trump. And that's it. And, you know, do I get that he's upset? Sure. Absolutely. But that's a little bit ridiculous. And I'm not a Trump supporter, and I sure the hell am not a Democrat supporter either. The Democrats messed up with this whole impeachment thing. I think it's nonsense. I think it's disgusting. But I also think that Trump is disgusting. And it's kind of like, I've heard that argument with this, right? But if we can find other clips of the crowd then I do think it plays merit. Because supposedly people were grimacing and just not happy. Mind you, this is a Trump rally. But I did just find something very interesting with looking through these clips. Now, what I'm about to show you, okay? They were both posted within the last 24 hours. One of them is from the Associated Press. The other one is from M Live. I don't know what that is. Never heard of this news outlet. This M Live has more views than the Associated Press. They're both claiming that this was within 12 hours ago when he made these remarks, which would make sense. He's been impeached for 14 hours now, so this would make sense. Now, what I'm about to show you, we're going to go through this together right now because I'm really interested in this. For sure. Oh, I agree. I agree with you there. But I want you guys to really look at this. I'm going to come on camera. Okay. I want you guys to really look at this, okay? This top one is from M Live. You see it was posted 9 hours ago. Okay? The one where it's moving right now, okay? It's posted 9 hours ago. President Trump targets Debbie Dingell and late husband during Michigan rally. Okay? 9 hours ago. Second one by the Associated Press. Now look very, 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 very closely. Trump targets late Representative John Dingell at Michigan rally. This one was posted 11 hours ago. Here's my question. Between the top two videos that you see right there, does anything look different? Let me take off all this real quick. Does anything look different in these two top videos? Anything at all? I want to know if you guys can pick out the same thing. You nailed it. You nailed it, boss. You nailed it, Wolfgang. How is this from the same rally, but the crowd is different? The color scale could be one thing, right? They could be picking up different feeds. There could be different cameras. There just could be. So as far as the colors that you're seeing, like the off color, I don't really play too much into that. But the people are either now, are they just placed different? Because I do now see the black lady up behind the girl in the leopard with the hat on. So I wonder if these cameras are just placed differently and it's really throwing me off. I could have just debunked my entire theory right there, which is probably the case. I want to play this one real quick.
You ever hear of her, Michigan? Debbie Dingell, that's a real beauty. So she calls me up like 8 months ago. Her husband was here a long time. But I didn't give him the B treatment. I didn't give him...
I think it's a lot. I think it is the same people. Actually. I think it is the same people now that I'm really looking at it. There's the black girl up over the left shoulder of Trump, as well as as well as the girl in the leopard. She's wearing the hat. Here's the guy that kind of like grimaces, smiles. Now this kid...
Then you have this.
Yeah, there you go. The girl in the leopard right there is behind his right shoulder here. It's the angle. This is the guy above his right shoulder is who you can just kind of see in that last picture in the other video. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. It's the angle. That threw me off for a second. I was like, is this all doctored right now? Like, why? It completely threw me off right there. It completely threw me off because this kid in the hat, this ginger in the hat, he was not in the other frame. It's the angle. Well, we debunked it because it kind of freaked me out for a second. I was like, wait, what is going on here? Now, we are still waiting for Pelosi to hold her weekly press conference. And we're going to hope to see if she's actually going to follow through and pass the articles off to the Senate and let them do their job. Or are they not? And she's going to hold out for a fair trial. I've learned a lot about impeachment over the last 24 hours, and there's nothing in the United States Congress, in the United States Constitution, excuse me. There's also nothing in the impeachment proceedings that states that once the Speaker of the House, once the House of Representatives has a vote, the Speaker of the House then has to send over the articles of impeachment. Literally, walk over the articles of impeachment. That is stated. That she has to walk over the articles of impeachment to the Senate. But there is no timeline for this. So technically, with this law, with the way that the articles of with the way that impeachment proceedings are written by our forefathers and original Congress and such like that, this impeachment can go on from 9 p.m. last night all the way through the election and all the way through Trump's 4 years. And he may never be removed and they may never vote. Do I think it will come to that? I really don't know. But there is no law, nothing in our Constitution, nothing in the way that the proceedings should go that state that the Speaker of the House, after the vote in the House is taken and they vote to impeach the president, there is no law, rule, anything in the Constitution, in our framework that states that the Speaker of the House then has to walk over the articles of impeachment to the Senate in an allotted amount of time. If she doesn't, this really hurts the Democrats. And I'll explain why. Because they're already claiming partisan, right? Republicans. Now, I'm obviously playing devil's advocate here. I'm putting my what I think aside for a second. You guys can have your own opinions, and that's great, and I think you all should. and as do I. But for the context of this argument, I can't do this. Now, they needed to have a speedy trial to impeach Donald Trump, right? They couldn't go through the process of waiting for the courts to get people to come testify before Congress. They couldn't do that. They didn't have time. They have to do this all before the next election. So they set a House vote for last night. They then impeach the President of the United States to then just basically say, oh, well, it's okay. We're just going to hold these now. We're not going to send these to you until we actually have a reason to. Because we need to make sure that we think it's a fair trial, meaning the Democrats. Do you know how partisan that looks? It makes it look like, which we all kind of know, the Democrats don't care about Trump getting impeached. What they care about is him not getting reelected. Now, I get it. They're from the other party. They don't want to see the president get reelected. I get that. But to do something like impeachment, something that's only been done 3 times in our history, tried 4, but it never got that far with Nixon because he resigned. And you're taking this process and you're drawing it out, all for a quote-unquote quick vote, to then draw it out indefinitely? I believe that he was guaranteed re-election from the moment they really started this process and started to move forward with it. I agree with you, Charles. I really do. And Andrew, I know that that's also true. And there, McConnell said, if you go back to the beginning of it, because I know a lot of you weren't in here at the very beginning, but McConnell stated that there were news outlets, and he quoted them, news outlets and some congressmen and women that stated that impeachment begins now, before he was even the Republican nominee. Yeah, that would be interesting, boss. But what I think is going to happen is that the Democrats are going to lose the House. Because this is looking more and more and more partisan every single day, every single hour, every single minute. It's really making me think they don't give a crap if Donald Trump gets impeached or not. This was all a big process and all a big waste of money so that we, the American people, don't reelect him. And I think it backfired. Like crazy. I agree, boss, but I don't think it's going to help the Democrats. I think this is all going to hurt the Democrats. I really do. I really, really, really do. Hold on 1 second. I have to take this call. I will be right back. Please continue to talk. I know Pelosi's about to speak, and we're just gonna continue to wait for this. But yeah. Please continue to talk. I will be right back. My apologies for that, but I had to do something real quick. Yeah, I think that this is going to backfire on the Democrats. And like I said, I am far from a Republican. I am not a Democrat. I think they're all crappy. I really do. Yeah, actually, one of the Democrats last night that voted no on both articles of impeachment, voted no, is actually defecting from the Democratic Party and is going to become a Republican. That tells you something. I just wish Trump would shut up. I really do. Okay, boss. As an American citizen, do I think that that's good? No. Do I think that that's proper? No. Do I think it hasn't been done before? Absolutely not. I think it has. I think that Trump was the only one to get caught doing it. My personal opinion. Also, besides that, take that all off the freaking table. What? Do you just let Joe Biden get away with it? Do you just let Joe Biden get away with this? Because in my mind, what he did is just as bad as Trump, if not worse. And the reason why I say that is because while you're vice president of the United States of America, your son should not be in any foreign company making $50,000 in a business that he has $50,000 a month in a business that he has no business being in because he has no experience, no, you know, no real rhyme or reason to be there. At the same exact time, you're withholding aid from the same country that Trump did because you don't like the prosecutor in that country? What's up, Ashton? What did Joe Biden do exactly? His son was making $50,000 a month with a Ukrainian, on the board of a Ukrainian gas oil company, when he had absolutely no business doing that. Now, I don't care. You can do whatever you want as an American citizen. That's the beauty of being an American citizen. I can work for a Ukrainian company if I so damn well choose. But not while my father is vice president of the United States. I completely disagree with that. Just saying. No skills, no background? Absolutely. And then on top of that, I just don't think that, like, okay, they want to hire him, they want to do all of this, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. But not while my father is vice president of the United States. I don't think that that's okay. And Trump's kids are basically doing the same exact thing. The only difference is that Trump's businesses were established for years. Oh, I agree with that. Clinton got dome in a freaking in the Oval Office. What he did was salacious. Like you said, absolutely. I don't think that was impeachable, but I do believe that he lied to Congress. Am I correct? Which is a felony. Didn't he lie to Congress? I believe that one was pretty much a sham too. That's why they didn't remove Clinton. Because they realized it was just a bunch of nonsense. Agreed. Thank you, Ashton. Yeah, Clinton did. Now, that is an impeachable offense, if he did, because I was too young for that, okay? So mind you, I'm not misinterpreting the facts. I was just too young for it. I was 9 years old when Clinton was getting impeached. So I had no idea what the hell was going on. Hold on one second, guys. Hello?
Good morning. How are you? Good, that's good. We've been hearing from people all over the country since last night and this morning. Seems like people have a spring in their steps because the president was held accountable for his reckless behavior. No one is above the law, and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. No one is above the law, and the president has been held accountable. It really is interesting to see the response that we are getting bipartisan across party lines. I myself want to say I have a spring in my step because of the moral courage of our caucus. To see them all, so many of 100 members, go to the floor, that's all that we had time for, to go to the floor and speak about our Constitution, about the facts of the case, so clearly, so patriotically, so prayerfully, and so solemnly, but so definitely. Just to get this off the table right away, we impeached the president immediately. Everybody was on to the next thing. The next thing for us will be when we see the process that is set forth in the Senate, then we'll know the number of managers that we may have to go forward, and who we would choose. That's what I said last night. That's what I'm saying now. The precedent for this, and I met with my 6 chairs after some of us were together for a press conference after the votes last night, and we discussed the precedent of it all, and that is in the most recent case.
To be perfectly honest, I wouldn't want to
taking up
sleep
an
in the bed of the
impeachment,
President of the
there
United
was
States either.
a
If he needs to
proposal on the
wake up in the
floor,
middle of the night
put together
to
by,
go
in a
down to the war room,
bipartisan
I do
way.
not want to be woken
100
up all the
senators
time.
voted for the process on how they would go
Just
forward.
saying.
On
But
the
give me a
case of
second, guys. Listen to
President
Pelosi.
Clinton.
Keep talking.
We would hope that they could come to some conclusion like that. But in any event, we're ready. When we see what they have, we'll know who and how many we will send over. That's all I'm going to say about that now. We've had a very eventful week. I'm so proud of our members and really in some cases the bipartisanship of some of this and some not. Last year's campaign, we said, for the people, we would lower the cost of health care, starting with lowering the cost of prescription drugs and preserving the pre-existing condition benefit. Within the past week, we passed the Elijah Cummings Lower Drug Costs Now Act, which does just that. As we were passing it last week, we discussed the particulars of it. But with the savings that we gained from that, I think it's important to note that we already said we would be spending the hundreds of billions of dollars in savings on expanding benefits for Medicare, dental, visual, hearing, and in the biggest expansion of Medicare since its inception. Next, we did lower an important bipartisan bill, the appropriations bill, to keep government open and to do so early enough so that you knew to make your weekend plans and get started for all the holidays you may be observing. And that was a major accomplishment. It took constant back and forth, but we ended up, as I have always said, as an appropriator myself, one forged in that culture, left to their own devices, the appropriators can get the job done. And I salute Chairwoman Nita Lowey for her work, the ranking member as well, and we're very pleased with that legislation. I guess I'll take up cloture or something on the Senate pretty soon, and hopefully it will be on its way to the President for a signature. Before I leave the subject of impeachment, though, let me commend our 6th chairman, Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, Chair of Judiciary, so proud of him, Maxine Waters, Financial Services, Richie Neal, Ways and Means Committee, Elliot Engel, the Foreign Affairs Committee, and also a very important committee chaired now by Carolyn Maloney, the Government Reform Committee. I said last night and I say today, while he isn't with us today physically here, Elijah Cummings is with us in spirit. The foundation he helped lay for justice is with us. And he said, when we're dancing with the angels, what will we know about what we did to keep the Constitution intact? When he said that, it was very prescient. Little did we know that by the time we passed the impeachment resolution, well, the articles of impeachment, that he would be dancing with the angels. Right now, as we speak, they're debating on the floor the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement. I hear my colleagues on the floor last night saying, well, if we weren't doing this, we could do Mexico. Well, we are doing Mexico. And the discussion that took some time to convince the administration and the other countries was that we weren't going forward until we had the strongest possible enforcement of the trade agreement and also manifested in the legislation that we'll have on the floor today, the implementing legislation. As you've heard me say over and over again, this is about enforcement, the overarching issue. If you can enforce it, it doesn't matter what you put forth. And of the concerns that we had, one were workers' rights, the other pharmaceuticals, and the other the environment. And we made giant progress from, first of all, over the existing NAFTA for sure. But apart from that, big distance between what the administration was proposing to begin with in all of those areas. and to where we ended up now going forward. I'm very pleased to have the statement today that went out from the AFL-CIO from Richard Trumka. He said, "We are proud." He said, "There is no denying that the trade rules in America will now be fair. Working people have created a new standard for future trade negotiations." I think it's a template for future trade agreements. Some of my members think, let's not give it that much, but we'll see how it goes in the implementation. That means everything. Then after that, today we will do SALT, and that is going to be the state and local tax that the Republicans put on to
I
punish
do
blue
believe that a lot
states
of this
largely.
country was founded and based off of
It
racism at
is paid
first.
for,
I'm
this
going to have to
legislation
agree with that.
Repeal the SALT tax, and
We
it
literally
will
raped and
be paid
pillaged
for by
so many
increasing
Indians.
the rate on wealthiest individuals in our
From the
country.
start of our
When the president
country's
first proposed
history,
his,
we've had
tax
racism.
scam, they were saying we're never going to
So,
lower the individual.
let's not
rate,"
go down that
and
route.
then they did, and now we will raise it again to repeal SALT. So we're very proud of what we have done. As you know, the Republicans keep saying, well, we should be working. We've sent over 400 bills, 275 of them sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. Well, 400, but 275
Now it
of
is.
those, at least, are bipartisan. The range of subjects is. Well, you
I mean,
heard me say
I'm
it,
not
but
getting
bears
into this
repeating, I
conversation right
think.
now. This is a
That
debate for another
includes
day,
all of our
which
top
I'm
10
not against
pieces of
having, but
legislation,
right now I'm not getting into this.
background checks, expanded background checks. People have to have a background check unless they buy it at
You
a
know,
gun show,
and I think
online, or in some kind of straw
I think we should
transaction.
just leave it
So
there,
this is
keep it
not
civil,
creating background checks. It is expanding them, and as well as the
because that's not what I'm streaming about right now.
One is HR 8, the
That
other
is something that we could speak about, just
11,
not
12.
right this very minute.
295 days ago, we sent those bills to Mitch McConnell, the Grim Reaper. I've news for him. He may think they're dead on arrival there, but they are alive and well in the general public. And every day that he does not take up that legislation, because he knows it will pass, he fears that it will pass, or else he'd take it up. Every day that he does not pass it, 100 people die. Not all of them would by gun violence. Not all.
But
of
I'm
them
definitely
would be
open to
saved
having
by
this
the
conversation,
legislation.
just not right now.
And so
Number one, I don't have
urge him
facts in
to
front of me.
take
Number
up
two,
that
I'm just not
life-saving
prepared for this.
legislation. The list goes
And
on.
yeah.
Paycheck fairness, equal pay for equal
So
work,
I don't really
violence
care what
against women,
Pelosi has to say right now. What I do care about is
women,
the press conference.
the
Unfortunately, I
legislation to
really
raise the
can't
minimum
lower
wage
her
of the 30-some million,
because we're
33
listening
million
on a
people
site where
who will get a pay raise with the increase.
I
in
can
the
either
minimum
mute
wage.
her or
20 million of them
keep her
are
at this
women.
volume. So we're gonna mute her for a minute. So yeah, all I know is that all of them suck, and I think that the Democrats did screw themselves this time. I really do. Personally, it's my personal opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Oh, there's still slavery today. It's just not it's not by color. The middle class and the poor are slaves. Let's be real. We don't live to work. We work to live. You know what I mean? That's just my personal opinion about that. I think that we're all basically slaves, unless you're the 1%. Because without money, you can't do anything. You know? So, just saying that's definitely one thing. He did because he's a dick. He is a dick. Coffee check. Yeah, I have coffee. It's really cold right now, but I do have it. I do have it, though. Thanks, Ashton. But thank you guys for keeping it civil, and I'm open for a debate about that, but metaphorically, I think that we could be, but in this country, I do agree, Charles, we can.
The trial. That is where you put the managers. I was not prepared to put the managers in that bill yet because we don't know the arena that we are in. Frankly, I don't care what the Republicans say. Any other questions? Not on this subject. I've said this
Here
is
we
it.
go.
I honored Nancy.
Last night you suggested you needed to see a fair process in the Senate.
But we'd like to see a fair process, but we'll see what they have, and we'll be ready for whatever it is. Yes, Chad?
Is that the requirement? You need to see a fair process before.
We would hope there would be a fair process, just as we hope that they would honor the Constitution. By the way, I saw some of it, I didn't see it, but I heard some of what Mitch McConnell said today, and it reminded me that our founders, and when they wrote the Constitution, they suspected that there could be a rogue president. I don't think they suspected that we could have a rogue president and a rogue leader in the Senate at the same time. Yes?
All right, well, then my apologies for that comment.
Any other questions on anybody want to talk
I didn't
about,
mean to
Mexico
frustrate
Free Trade
anybody.
Agreement?
So
Anybody
my
care about
apologies for that comment.
Jobs for the American people, progress in addressing globalism and the issues. Anybody want to talk about the SALT tax that we're passing today? Important issues that relate to the economic vitality of our communities. Any other questions? Because I'm not going to answer any more questions on this. Clearly, do you understand? When we see what their process is, we will know who and how many we want to send over. Not until then. I'm not going to go there.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
USMCA, one expects the president will campaign how he got rid of the worst trade deal in history and made a better deal. Is that something you want to take credit for?
Of course we'll take credit for it because what he proposed did not fill the bill of what he just described. But there are those, and some of you who care about substance, have in the past asked about whether we would pass that because it would have what we call collateral benefit to the president. I don't care about that. But we had an opportunity to do something very important for the American people, for America's workers, and we could not let him stand in the way of that because he would go out and take credit. So this isn't about him. It's about American workers. It's about being good neighbors in our hemisphere. And frankly, we weren't going to go down that path until the administration
she doesn't want to
conceded
talk about
on
impeachment
many
at
of the
all.
provisions that they had in their original proposal.
She wants to do the
which were not
opposite.
acceptable and which were not, as you described, the president.
See if there's any more questions
Yes, sir.
about this.
You had any conversations with Congressman Van Drew about maybe talking
None.
within the new
Zero.
year, give any advice to the
No, I know, nothing. Zero. One more, that's it, yeah.
Last night had some pretty harsh comments about your dear friend Debbie Dick.
You have a good one, boss. I appreciate it.
Let us pray. Let us pray for the president. This is, the president clearly is insecure when it comes to statespersons. Whether it was John McCain, think of what he said about John McCain, and his supporters just overlooked that. John McCain. Now John Dingell.
He would have been a great president, John McCain,
Understands is that
in my
cruelty
personal
is
opinion.
not wit. Just because he gets a laugh for saying the cruel things that he says doesn't mean he's funny. It's not funny at all. It's very sad. Thank you all very much. Happy holidays to all of you.
All right. I don't know how much more or what else is going on right now. Ped? What do you mean by ped? Oh. We're picking up live scenes from Moscow where 3 were reportedly shot and killed. Oh, it was pretty petty? Oh, got it. If Trump said he's looking up at us as low, as F, regardless of my opinion, he should have respect. Absolutely. I mean, Trump did say that. We all watched it. He wasn't talking about McCain there, but that I don't think that matters who he was talking about. He was talking about the longest sitting congressman ever, and yeah, it's just bad. She still has like this thing with like her mouth. Like I don't know what it is. She talks like this, and I don't know why she does that. So we're looking at live pictures of Moscow where 3 were reported dead in a shooting. I want to see if there's anything else going on. Let's see. I don't know how much longer I'm going to stay on. Why were they shot? I mean, it doesn't say. This is the only information that I'm getting. 3 people reportedly killed in a shooting in Moscow. So I have no idea. It seems like, to me, just by that title, it's kind of like a systemic problem that we have in the U.S. Mass shootings, etc. By that title, that's what it seems like. Obviously, we don't know that for sure. Yeah. I agree, Andrew. I agree. Doesn't say by who. Yeah, it doesn't say anything right now. This literally just broke as Pelosi was talking, so I think this is all we're gonna get. This is the only thing we're gonna see. Let's see. See if I can find any information on this right now. So 22 minutes ago, shooting erupts at Russia's spy agency. Interesting. So this is Russia's spy agency, huh? That's interesting. Russian news reports say that up to 3 people were killed in a shooting inside the reception area of the Federal Security Service headquarters in central Moscow. Damn. A deadly shooting erupted in or near the headquarters of Russia's Federal Security Service in central Moscow on Thursday evening. And Russian news reports said up to 3 people were killed, at least some of them employees of the spy agencies. The shooting, highly unusual for one of the most secure parts of Moscow, came in the same day Vladimir Putin gave his annual televised news conference. And that's all it has. Izvest's news site said the shooting broke out in the reception area of the Federal Security Building in Lubyanka in central Moscow, but other reports suggested gunfire was outside. Another event, it is literally at the spy agency of Russia. That is what we are looking at. That building is the spy agency of Russia. They do, Sean. Agreed. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. I don't know if we're really going to get much more on this right now. I think we're just going to be looking at this for a while. Usually in these situations, we don't really get to see much more. We'll see where this cameraman goes, or is trying to go. But I don't think he's getting very far. And if he doesn't, I'm just going to end it here for now, because that's it for now. What was that noise? It's definitely a cool looking building. What was that noise? You guys heard that? It almost sounded like pop, pop. Didn't really sound like gunshots though. I'm not sure. I mean, it could have been gunshots, but I don't know.
Да, я тоже журналист, просто хочу быть в курсе событий.
Нет, спасибо, все сейчас будет.
So yeah, for now, I think I'm actually going to hop off of here. Thank you guys for the love. Keep an eye on Russia. I'll keep an eye on other things, but not really much else going on. We're not really going to see anything, I don't think. Just a whole bunch of police lights and cordons. When I get an update about this, I'll let you guys know. I feel you, Ashton. I don't intend to be back on until probably tonight. Like, probably late tonight, to be honest. See what's going on in the world. Yeah, maybe like 8 hours. Protests in India begin again. Yes, probably around anywhere between 8 to 12 hours I'll be back on. You should cover England. We can look into this.
Speaker, to hear Her Majesty talk about setting up a royal commission on justice.
Of course, Ashton.
I don't think this is really necessary. I could refer the government to a slew of Public Accounts Committee's reports and concerns raised on probation, where we have seen a failure of the modernisation of the probation system and an attempt to reverse those changes. Prisons, where we've seen a slashing.
I don't really
of
know
prison
too much
officer
about
numbers
British
and huge
politics
issues
or how
there.
they work.
Chaos in courts and tribunals, and a huge IT project that is behind schedule. The problem is, several Secretaries of State and Justice were throwing everything in the air, wanting to change everything overnight, and that is a recipe for chaos. What we need is to go back to the basics, to stability, not have stop-start, not to have reversal, and make sure there is proper investment in our criminal justice system. A Royal Commission worries me. It kicks the can down the road, as there is a danger that we'll never actually deliver. A Royal Commission can take a couple of years, and a governor has to consider it. We haven't got that time to wait. Actually, it's much more simple than that, and I hope the government will look at those bits of our work and make sure that it takes those points on board. I was interested in the National Skills Fund, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I hope, hopefully, that this might mean investment for people in low-paid work who want to improve their skills, something the Labour manifesto proposed. If it will end the need of that barrier for skills training in further education, that barrier of a loan, which for many of my constituents, who are women returning to work, who've been in low-paid jobs, had children, and they do not want to take the risk of a loan in order to possibly get a better paid job. They can't afford that. They haven't got the credit record for that, and they're very nervous about that. If the National Skills Fund supports them, fantastic. If the National Skills Fund also makes sure that our young people are training in the tech skills that are global skills, that many of my tech businesses in Shoreditch find hard to get in the UK, then great. And as I said from the very beginning, if there is something that the government is doing that will help my constituents, I will work with them on that. But I wait to see the detail.
British Parliament, top left. India, top right. Moscow shooting, bottom
of the 650 members
left.
Of this House.
I'll be right
to the
back.
Home Office, representing constituents' concerns. I also represent the world in one borough. People from across the world come to my surgery telling me their problems with immigration. And we have 40,000 European citizens in Hackney, as well as the many Commonwealth citizens. And the hostile environment is in reality in my borough. When leave to remain was reduced from 5 years to 3 years, guess what? That meant 2 fees that constituents had to pay before they could apply for their citizenship. And then in a very mean-spirited way, it was reduced to 2 years. So you have to pay 3 times the fee Her Majesty talked about the government keeping borrowing and debt under control and a responsible fiscal strategy. Let me assure the government that if I am returned to the position as chair of the Public Accounts Committee, or indeed even if I'm not, I will hope that that committee watches every penny and pound of taxpayers' money that is being spent. And I will be challenging the government on the efficiency, the effectiveness and the economy of every promise made in this Queen's speech and every plan that emerges from it. But above all, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will challenge, cajole, criticise and at every stage make sure this government is doing what it can to deliver for the best interests of my constituents in Hackney South and Shoreditch.
Sir John Rayburn.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, it was a pleasure at the start of this debate to see our new Speaker in the chair, and I would like through you to send my congratulations to him. I'm delighted he was elected, and I'm quite sure he will be a fair and experienced judge of our affairs and will look after our House very well. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the recent election and the conversation I was able to conduct even more intensively than usual with the electors of Wokingham told me that they do want some changes, and I made promises to them that I would come here again as an advocate for more money for our local schools, which have been shortchanged in recent years. And so it is a pleasure in the gracious speech to see the down payments promised for next year, and I look forward to those continuing in the years that follow. And I and my electors agreed that we need more money for our local surgeries and more nurses and doctors to be recruited and better support for our local District General Hospital in Reading. And again, I see that answered already in the gracious speech with the promise of substantial new resources, financial and personnel, for the National Health Service generally. And I see that is going to be laid out in legislation for a 5-year period. So I welcome that, and it is a pleasure to say to my electors, 2 parts of the job seem to be well on the way to being done. But having little experience of government, I know that there will remain day by day, month by month issues to sort out to make sure that my constituency gets its fair share of the money. I will give way.
Very grateful to the right honourable gentleman. I was just wondering, in his capacity as former Secretary of State of Wales, that he shares my concern and indeed disappointment that there was no mention of Wales whatsoever in the Queen's speech, and also my concern that this money that is being promised to England, how will that find its way through the Barnett formula or wherever to Wales? And finally, would you perhaps ask the same question as me? How much longer do we need the Wales office for? Because looking at the behaviour of this place, there will be people outside who are begging the question, surely Wales could do a bit better than this.
Well, the Honourable Lady knows full well that there is a formula and consequentials from the English settlement, and so I'm quite sure that my right honourable friends in the government are going to look after Wales, and it is her job to test them.
All right, guys, I am out for now. I will be back on later tonight when other things pop up around the world. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon.
To speak for the wider nation, as we all do. I'm also